Hello and welcome to Dairyland Frights, the paranormal podcast that covers everything spooky, creepy, and mysterious in the Midwest and beyond. And today, the great guests keep continuing. I love it because we have Josh from Weird, Wisconsin. Welcome, Josh.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we're going to have fun today because number one, I love my Wisconsin people because a lot of people forget Wisconsin has a lot of interesting paranormal tales and cryptids and just a lot of strange stuff in Wisconsin that people really we tend to forget, right, Josh?
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's interesting. Every time I come up with a story on social media, people are like, I've lived here my whole life, 55 plus years, and I had no idea about that. So it's cool that we can educate and continuously educate people about all the weird stuff that Wisconsin has to offer.
Yeah, and not only in Wisconsin, but in the Midwest too. I mean, there's so
Right.
much fun things, cryptids, UFOs, ghosts, urban legends.
Hmm.
Just to name a few, right? And
Right.
that's what makes it fun. So,
Right,
uh,
exactly.
so why don't you tell my spooky friends a little bit about Weird Wisconsin and a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I currently live in Waukesha, and that's where I grew up. And it was from a very young age that I just started to experience weird things in my house, And I would see a lot of shadow people. I would share these stories with my friends, and they'd be like, "Oh, your house is haunted," and I'm like, "What's a haunting? What's a ghost? What are these things?" Because it's the mid '90s. The TV shows don't exist. You don't talk about this stuff in the middle of the '90s, right? It was so taboo, and so I started to do research, looking up books in my school library, and it's just kind of like set me off on this lifelong journey, to understand the paranormal. And in high school around Halloween time, I'd take my friends to like a cemetery to get them scared. But then it wasn't until college when like Ghost Hunters and Paranormal State came out that I was like, hey, I can do this too. And so I got a bunch of friends together. We formed UW Oshkosh's very first and only paranormal team, and we seriously investigated places all across the Midwest. And at that point, it was kind of a hobby. It was fun. It was thrill seeking. It was different. And I kind of like, I wouldn't say stepped away from this field for a while, but I just kind of like stopped paying attention to it. And then it came like storming back into my life. And I'd say ever since about 2016, I've been extremely dedicated to telling these stories, to teaching people, to learning more myself, documenting them. And it was in the middle of COVID when somebody told me a ghost story about Waukesha, where I live right now, and I had no idea. I'm like, I don't know. Let me try to find out. And I saw that there was a Waukesha Ghost Walks Facebook group, and I reached out to the owner, Mike Huberty, who runs American Ghost Walks, and
Yep.
he's like, I have no idea about that story, but would you like to be a tour guide? They have the Waukesha Ghost Walks tour, but it had been empty for a few years. I'm sorry, there was no tour guide because unfortunately the previous tour guide passed away. So he was like, we're looking for somebody if you want to do it. And I was instantly hooked. I learned the script, I learned the stories, and I've been doing that for the past 6 years. So with that, I've been able to like kind of become like the quote unquote paranormal expert of Waukesha, I would say, because I know the script forwards, backwards, sideways, in and out. I can do it any which way I want to. I've investigated a number of the locations associated with the stories. I've met the people that own the houses that have seen these ghosts themselves, and it's kind of become like my expertise of like, if you want to know more about ghosts in Waukesha, you come to me. And that's what led me to ultimately write the book, Waukesha, The Ghosts of Waukesha, which just came out October of 2025. Yeah, if you didn't believe I was an expert on ghosts in Waukesha, I wrote a whole book about it. So I certainly know a thing or two about the spooky things going on.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And yeah, I've checked out your YouTube and everything. You go on as YouTube for Josh and Weird Wisconsin and check it out and everything. Before we get into like Waukesha Ghost and everything like that, tell me about what was the like your first paranormal event that you can remember that kind of like changed your life, that got you inspired to kind of learn more, like you said, going to the library and learning about ghosts and having your little group, paranormal group where
Yeah.
you're checking out things.
Yeah, I would say it was when I was very young. I don't know the exact age, maybe 5, 7, 8 years old. I remember very vividly laying in bed, and my bed faced the doorway, and I would just see like this like transparent-ish type figure like peeking around my doorway. And I had a very, very active imagination. So I just thought
Yeah.
like maybe just my imagination running away. But then eventually it turned into I would see a full on person, very tall, like sprinting past my doorway. And I remember they had a very almost like comically long hat, kind of like the 1950s detectives, like they have kind of those big flat
Yeah.
brim hats, but it was like it was obnoxiously large hat. And I was just like, that's kind of funny, but like, what is this? I have no idea. This seems very different than a ghost because around Waukesha, we have very old houses. And a lot of my friends had haunted experiences where they would have cold spots and they would hear things and this and that. But this just felt different. So it wasn't until my mid 20s when I learned that that was a shadow figure that they call the Hat Man. And the Hat Man is this creature normally associated with like sleep paralysis, but I was wide awake in the middle of the day or the early morning seeing this thing. And so I finally got an answer that what I was seeing from a very young age, and that also other people have seen this all around the world. So it wasn't just like something that was just isolated to myself. But that is probably the first thing that I will ever say was that got me into this. And then once I started knowing that these things were around us and paying attention to them, my mom used to work for an old law firm, and we'd go there on Sunday afternoons to clean the office so she could make some extra cash. And old building, little boy by himself, and I would be exploring this historical building, and I would see things. You would hear things, you would like feel the hair on the back of your neck stand up, and I really started to pay attention to these things around me because I knew that they existed. And again, that's always just kind of followed me up until adulthood here, where I'll go into just like an old house or a unique spot and you just get that feeling, that sensation, and you kind of know that like, there's no ghost stories I know about this place, but I do sense something going on, and then when sometimes you mention that to people and they're like, please don't come back here ever again. Because, we like ghosts and we like hauntings, but there's certain people who it's like, do not ever mention that word. A very interesting story this past fall where I was doing research on a house and this woman threatened to sue me if I continued doing research or talking about her house. And I was like, lady, I could get Fox 6 News down on your front sidewalk and tell the whole world about your story and you could do nothing about it. So it's interesting. There's people who really, really, really don't want to believe that these things exist. So but I've also met people who believe everything that they see. So it seems like there's a nice balance. You can compromise there.
Absolutely. And to people who I don't know, there's a difference, right? There's skeptics who are just like, yeah, okay. And then there's people who just don't want to know. Like, because right? I don't know. There might be something scary that they just don't want to anger it, right? And that's hard, right? Because to explain to them, well, you're not really going to anger it unless you do something, I don't know, to infuriate it or something, like yell at it or challenge it, right?
Right.
And that's not what you want to do. Unfortunately, a lot of times there are shows out there they'll be like, scratch me or or push me or like, well, what are you doing? Like, you don't understand. You're asking for some problems, right?
Right. And that's whenever I reach out to a location that has stories associated with it, I come from a very calm perspective of like, hey, here's what I want to do. I'm always respectful. I'm never going to anger or anything, try to stir anything up, because what they're doing on TV show is to give you entertainment. They're not there to be factual or to be respectful because they just want to get the views, right? But my approach is that these people were living, or these spirits were once living, right? We should treat them as if they're still people living in this house. So, sometimes that comes across as like maybe timid. I don't know exactly what the right word might be, but, I like to go into a spot. I do get scared from time to time, but I'm never going to sit there and be like, you MFer, come out of here and possess me, because it's like, what are you doing? Come on. Just treat them like they're people at church or a bar or the grocery store,
Exactly. Yeah. Because they were people once. People don't understand that a lot of times is they were just like you and me.
Right.
Something happened. I don't know what it is. There's a lot of explanations. There's a lot of theories out there, but in general, they're people. So for whatever reason, they can't, I don't know, go into the light or whatever you want to say, cross over. Yeah. And it's kind of strange that way and everything, but who knows the reason why. So yeah,
and I think that kind of goes along with just the way I investigate these locations is it's treating them with respect, obviously, but also like using common sense when it comes to questions, like question asking. A lot of people will be investigators will ask like, do you have a name? You can like go to the ghost perspective. Well, oh duh, I have a name. What are you talking about? Or going in there and being like, do you know what year it is? they're probably looking at you, the ghost looking at the investigator, like, are you stupid? Like, of course I know what year it is. What's going on right now? So it's always like, you got to
Right.
like kind of like flip your thinking on these things because it's like, instead of, do you have a name? Well, what is your name? For me, it's 2026. What year is it for you? Which can probably sound very funny as well, but you really have to like think like you're talking to these people as if it's like the exact day that they're still living, which kind of unlocks a new way of investigating,
Yeah, absolutely. Because
or at least a new way of thinking about it.
yeah, right, exactly. And a lot of times they want to communicate to, I don't know, maybe get a story across. Maybe, ghosts can be lonely too. People don't
Yeah.
understand
Yep.
that. And they might have a message to share. And then there is the flip side where there's some evil out there, where there are ghosts who are
Yes.
evil, maybe demons or whatever you want to say. I think that's kind of overused, but
Right.
there are some places that
Yeah.
that's very, very scary. So let me ask you
Yep.
this, Josh. What experience did you have that might have changed you? Maybe you had this thought going into the investigation, and then wow, it just kind of just changed you, like maybe for the good, or maybe for like, am I going to do this again? Right? Am I going to continue to do this?
I'll kind of answer that with like the first investigation we ever did with my Oshkosh team was at this secondhand store in Stoughton, Wisconsin. We got permission to investigate it. It was a known haunted location. The previous owner wrote a book about it, but we had been mentored by a Fox Valley team, and they said we're going to take you to this secondhand store because it's like the holy grail. And I was like, sure, whatever, we'll find out,
Okay.
right? But I mean, we were a bunch of 20-year-old kids going into this place with all our gadgets that we got, and it was like a nuclear bomb went off. Like, I have been to dozens of other locations and nothing will match up to that very first time I went there.
Yeah.
We were seeing things, hearing things, being touched. Every device we had turned on was getting instant
Wow.
results. We were sitting in the dark at like 3 o'clock. I'm like, hey, let's turn off our flashlights. And we're all sitting like 6, 7 feet apart. And within 30 seconds, I feel a hand run up my thigh and grab my shoulder. And
Ooh.
it was just like, I cannot believe, like, is every investigation like this? And we quickly learned after that no, we had been to places that were supposedly very haunted and
Yeah.
sitting through 8, 10, 12 hours of evidence review and not get a single thing. Like, nothing nothing comes close to that first investigation we had in Stoughton, because it was just like, I can't believe what we're seeing right now. Within hours of being there, it was like these ghosts were just like warming up to us instantly and doing anything we wanted. And now
Wow.
I've had very good investigations since that, but I still have evidence from that first investigation that I will show people and be like, this is the best piece I've ever gotten, which is incredible.
Yeah. Do you remember what the history of that store was? I mean, was it like a brothel at one time? One of those? It was a brothel. It was a
Right.
bar. It was,
It was.
whatever.
It's one of those spots where it was initially it was a hotel, and then in like the 1920s, there was a police chief that leapt out of the second story window, and they say he committed suicide. But there's other people that believe that perhaps he was thrown out of the window. So there's
Huh.
that traumatic event that happened. During Prohibition, it was a speakeasy, and there was some questionable activity going on there. It was like I wouldn't say brothel, but there was apartments on the second story, and it was kind of like a halfway house, like kind of attracted shady people to it. And there was supposedly a hooker that was killed up there. And then the rumor was that in the basement, underneath like the very thick concrete floor, there was somebody that was buried, maybe killed by gangsters and then buried in the basement. And that was the room that I was touched in. So it had a very, very questionable past, but I think all of the activity was added to because of the antiques that were in the building. There was all sorts of stuff throughout that place that could have been feeding energy into those spirits. Because with the location, all the old stuff, you don't know what's attached to that. It was just kind of like the perfect storm for an investigation. And I actually went back there in 2022, I believe, 21, 22. The secondhand store closed down. A guy took everything out, gutted the place, renovated the whole thing. And it was like walking into a dead cell. There
Hmm.
was nothing that happened. So I
Wow.
do definitely believe that the antique portion added to all of it. We did bring a medium with us. When I bring this person with me, I just tell him like, "Hey, Jay, we're going to meet at a park and ride at 7. I'll pick you up and we're going." And so I don't tell him if it's a McDonald's, a house, a church, whatever. We We go to the spot, and he actually, when we passed that window on the second floor where the police chief jumped out of, he stopped and just kind of like said, like, somebody died here. And he's like, I get the sense that they like killed themselves. And he had no idea that any of that happened. But he was able to go through a location that he had no information about, and his abilities picked up on that traumatic event that took place. So perhaps there is still some energy left over there, but I don't need to ever go back because it didn't feel like the same place at all after being there.
Yeah, that's really interesting, Josh, because I don't know if you've heard about the theory, stone tape theory,
Yep.
about yeah. So like objects, whatever, soak up the energy, good or bad, and so you may bring something into your house. It could be as benign as a candlestick. But if someone used that
Right.
candlestick to bludgeon someone to death with it, you didn't know it, or
Right.
that whatever happened, that energy then will come out one way or another and could bring shadow people, could bring other nefarious things, or could bring some cool things into your place. So I think you're right. Those antiques probably saw a lot of different things and a lot of different energy associated with it, and ghosts are feeding off of that.
Right.
Well, what do you think?
Yeah. It's cool that you bring up stone tape because I was obsessed with the stone tape theory for about 2 years.
Okay.
I had a really interesting experience in Ireland at the Hellfire Club. I'm sure you've heard of that
Nice.
place.
Yes.
But this is essentially a place that doesn't have doors, windows. It doesn't have floors. It's flooded. It's gross. There's animals living in it. And I was there on like 11 o'clock on a Monday afternoon and had such a bizarre experience by energy that I felt in that location, and it did not make sense. And so as I'm doing research on like why is this like decrepit old building made of stone giving me such bad feelings and vibes, especially in the middle of the day, right? And that's when I came across stone tape theory, and I was like, this is incredible. I've never heard of this before. I can't believe this is something that people have been studying. And I actually put together like a whole documentary pitch about it and wanted to go shoot a documentary out in Ireland involving stone tape theory and castles
Nice.
and ruins and graveyards because I mean the hauntings that occur in other parts of the world are so much older and deeper and ingrained into that culture and all those natural elements that's like we can't fathom that in the United States because we're what, how many years old now? Less than
Oh,
300, I know that much.
yes.
But
Yes.
it's just like when I was talking to people in Ireland about this, they're like, oh, that's cute, like America, like you're not that old, but like over here, like we believe in this stuff so much, like this is like just common sense for us to a
Right.
degree. So yeah, I do believe that spirits attach themselves to objects, whether they like it or not. I believe energy does grab onto certain objects or places or certain elements, and it stays in that location or with that thing as long as it does exist. You could go down a whole other rabbit hole about what happens to like a haunted house when it gets torn down. Where does that energy then go? But
Yep.
we got to limit ourselves to an hour-ish podcast here, right? So
Yeah.
we can't go
I'll have
we
to,
can't go
yeah.
down too many rabbit holes.
Yeah, I'll have to have you on again, and we can maybe have an episode just on that. What do you think? I think
Right,
that'd be a
right,
good idea, and we could discuss
right,
that. And really quickly, stone tape theory is really fascinating. There's some critics behind it and everything, but like one of the
right.
biggest areas is Gettysburg. I mean,
Yeah.
the rocks, the trees, the houses, the
Hmm.
everything, because all it saw was blood and guts and death, and they didn't see the best of the best, and
Right,
all that
right,
just soaked into the ground. And people I've had on who have gone to Gettysburg and done research have always come back with a story, always have said
right,
they've been out and about, and they'll go around a corner or something, and they'll be like seeing a spirit, if you want to say, of a
right.
young boy or a soldier or whatever, like in the middle of the day, like they're
Yep.
just taking a walk, or they'll hear musket sounds, they'll hear cannon sounds, they'll hear
Hmm.
again. And you can't go, unfortunately, Gettysburg is not open at night, and they will not, only limited people can go in there, investigators who have, let's be honest, somebody like the ghost hunter, and I call him Zach Bagel Bites,
Right,
he can go in there. But guys like you and me, no, we would have to get a special thing and have to figure it all
right,
out, and.
right,
But the good thing is it's during the day too. It doesn't matter. So you can go out there and go during the day. and see something. Along with the Hellfire Club, just for my spooky friends here, go and research that. It's a very,
Yeah.
that's another thing we could have a talk about on the podcast, which we don't have time, but very,
Right.
very interesting things that happened in there, sacrifices, murders,
Hmm.
rituals, on and on and on and on and on. It goes,
Right.
whether you believe, you don't believe, again, we weren't there, but the history, obviously, probably speaking to some people in that area will probably tell you some really, really interesting stories right about that place.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that's, along with stone tape theory, for years, I've always thought like, you don't have to be investigating on Friday the 13th on a full moon at 3 a.m. I think you can have a paranormal encounter on a Tuesday at 10 a.m., maybe even more so than when all those perfect elements come together. I think that hauntings are going to happen when they want to and how they want to versus when you want them to because you believe that it's the perfect conditions, right? Now, I have had a lot of encounters at that witching hour at 3 a.m., but I've also had a lot of encounters at Sunday at 1 p.m., so it's a mixed bag.
Yeah.
But the more I've done investigating during the day, because I get tired at night, I can't stay up till
I
3
see.
a.m. much anymore.
I
But
hear you.
I'll do like a 3, a 4, 8 p.m. investigation and have just as good of results. So I think maybe it's a new wave we can start introducing as daytime ghost hunting.
Absolutely. Because a lot of people, well, it's more spooky at night. It's more creepy at
Right.
night. People think there's more energy at night. And I've heard numerous paranormal investigators tell me, no, that's not true. Like you said, I've gone out during the day and heard footsteps and have heard voices and have heard more than sometimes I've done it at 3 in the morning or witching hour, which is 3 in the morning or whatever, right?
Right.
Usually it's 11 to 4, 11 to 5, depend who you talk to. They said that's most energy. That's debatable. We could talk about that.
Right.
Getting back to what you were saying
Right.
when you're in Ireland, that was really cool. That's one of my dream trips to go to. I've had people on here from the UK and they always make me laugh
Mm.
because they're always just like, "Oh yeah, the pub is haunted." Like like if their pub isn't haunted, there's something wrong. Like, you know what I mean? It's like
Right.
in Wisconsin, if you go somewhere and can't find cheese, there's something wrong. I mean, there's something going on here. You know what I mean?
Right.
To
Right.
that effect, not absolutely, but you know what I'm saying. It's just like, okay, Wisconsin, we're known for certain things. A good beer, some cheese, a great burger, whatever you want to say. That's pretty easy to
Right.
find. A fish fry, that's pretty easy to find.
Hmm.
You don't have to stretch to go do that. It's the same in the UK,
Right.
and they always, tell me like, well, my flat, they're what we call an apartment. They're like, oh yeah, that was
Hmm.
haunted. The building is from the 1400s, or the building is from the 1600s, and we're young puppies. They have furniture older than us, like
Right.
different countries,
Right.
right? And so they, a lot of UK people they love America, but they love the bigger ones like Gettysburg, some of
Yeah.
the sanitariums, like, out
Hmm.
there, like in Ohio with the different prisons and everything like that, and so on and so forth. So, yeah, I just think it's really interesting, and you get so much rich tradition and everything. So that is awesome.
Right.
I'm glad you
Yeah.
went to Ireland. That's a whole different podcast, I guess. I'd love to find out
I
more
mean,
for you.
it was so incredible. We went from Dublin south over west to Galway, and it's just like going to a different world. It was
Right.
just so incredible. So yeah, highly recommend that trip to anybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Did you kiss the Blarney Stone when you were in Ireland?
We did. So we went to Cork for a night, and I was like, should we just go to Blarney Castle? Let's just do it. We're here. And I've heard, horror stories about people having to wait like 3 hours, but we
Right.
walked right up to the stone, and I was blown away by how it's just like a guy sitting there, and he's like, okay, lay down and grab those bars on the side of the castle, and I'll hold you by the waist. I'm like, shouldn't there be a harness or like a net or something? And it was literally a little like 2 bar cage, and then the rock was right there, and they had to like lower you down quite a bit. I was like, this seems quite dangerous, but it was fun. It was quite a thrill going down there and kissing it. And the castle and the gardens were beautiful, and Cork itself was great. But I was just like, wow, I thought maybe in 2020, that was 2022 when we went. I'm like, maybe they would have had some sort of safety,
Right.
but no, it was just some guy that grabs your waist and then you take a picture and you're done.
Yeah, yeah.
It was really cool. And it's a tourist trap, you might say, but I think it's the tourist traps of America are way different than Ireland or the UK, other parts of the world. I think everything that people talk about in Ireland, like Temple Bar or the Blarney Stone, it's like just go to it to do it because it's worth the visit.
Yeah, exactly. And I wouldn't be surprised if he was drinking a Guinness while he was holding you with one arm, and then you're fine, pal. You're like, can you at least put down your
The other
Guinness?
thing, they always say the Guinness is better in Ireland. It's significantly better. So if you're a Guinness fan or not,
Yes, I am.
the Guinness alone is worth the trip. So
Oh
the
man, you
rumors on that
sold
part are
me.
true.
You sold me. You sold me, Josh. So before we get to our topic today, I just want a couple things. Could you tell me a couple stories about Waukesha and maybe stories that that are pretty popular there, so people can, my spooky friends can kind of look it up and maybe reach out to you if they have any questions and be like, hey Josh, can you tell me more about this? Especially I have a lot of my listeners are in Wisconsin, obviously, so maybe
Oh,
they haven't
sure.
been
Yeah,
there.
yeah. Well, what's interesting is that before starting the tour, I had no idea about any of these stories. And again, I didn't start the tour. I didn't create it. I just started doing it. So when Mike Huberty started telling me these stories, I was like, I cannot believe this took place here. And I get that same reaction from 45 all the way up to like 75, 80-year-old women who are like, I've lived in Waukesha since I was a little girl. I had no idea any of this took place. And I'm not saying like details about stories, like whole entire events that they're like, wow, I had no idea. And all of that's featured in my new book. Shameless plug.
Ah, nice. Thank you.
But
Nice
you can,
plug.
I will give you a little teaser, but yeah, this is the book that just came out in October. I actually co-wrote it with Mike Huberty. But yeah, it's really interesting. This time of year, one of the cool stories I like to tell is about this little boy that was found dead in a quarry in Waukesha, 1921. And to this day, they still have no idea the identity of that little boy. And he's buried in the local cemetery here, and very small gravestone with little toys around it from visitors that come. But all it says is unknown boy found in quarry and the date that they found his body. What's interesting about that story is that when back in 1921, when they pulled him out of the pond, he was dressed in very, very nice clothing. So he looked like he was either like from money, rich, or like going to a fancy party, right? So it was a bit perplexing why this boy was dead, right? And why he was disposed of in this quarry. And they actually took the little boy's body and put him up in the front window of a funeral home for 1 week so that anybody could come by and potentially identify the body. After 1 week, nobody did. And then a local woman actually raised money and buried him in the cemetery. So she raised money for a coffin and a new suit. And then eventually in the 1950s, there was a lead on this cold case. They believed there was a man from Milwaukee who was the father of this little boy who had lost a wife, and I believe one of his wives disappeared under very similar circumstances. They never found
Hmm.
where she went, if she was alive or dead. But he was also abusing another wife. So they started to do some research on this man and found that, hey, his 8-year-old boy who matched the description of this unknown boy, we have no idea where he is. What happened? And the dude said that he gave that boy up for adoption to some people from Chicago who moved to South America, and all three died in a car crash,
Hmm.
which sounds like a
Yeah.
bit of a cover up,
Yeah.
but they
Right.
never could find any evidence to link him to this other boy's murder. So that's the most progress we've had on that cold case. Yeah, over 100 years later now, that
Wow.
boy's been in Prairie Home Cemetery, and no idea who he is. And that anniversary is coming up in about 2 weeks, I believe. March 8th is the anniversary of when they found that boy. Now, they don't think he died on March 8th. They think he might have been killed and then thrown in the quarry as early as like the fall of 1920. So he was there pretty much all winter until the ice thawed out, which and it's a very sad, very tragic story, but it's interesting because we still don't know who he is, and there's been some leads on it. And the chances are that he's most likely the son of that man from Milwaukee. I go out there every March 8th. We put some flowers on the gravestone. I think
Oh,
this year we're going to
nice.
bring a psychic or a medium out to maybe see if we can get some interaction maybe from a spirit, because that is one thing that they tried back in 1921. They actually had a like a remote viewer try to figure out what happened to this boy, and they had a few images that came to this person. They started to get an idea of maybe where this boy came from, but again, there was no way they could verify that or potentially find out who is connected to this. So it's kind of just a just different, bizarre, weird story that when you look up Waukesha hauntings, history, true crime, that's one of the first stories that pops up.
Yeah, interesting. That's really interesting. Does Waukesha have a famous ghost or urban legend that maybe you want to tell my spooky friends?
Now, there's two of them that come to mind. I'll tell the one about the farm. Okay, so there's like a really big farm just outside of Waukesha near Vernon Marsh, if people are familiar with that area. And this farm goes back to like 1848. Very, very old farm. And it was the Hill family that lived there from about 1848 until 1930. So they were there for a very long time. But what's wrong about this farm is that most of the Hill family died there under very tragic circumstances. One of the first deaths on that property itself was somebody was fishing and fell into the river and drowned. In the late 1880s, the Hill mother came down with some sort of illness, called the family doctor out, and he actually gave her accidentally an overdose of morphine, and she died within a couple of hours.
Oh boy.
In the there was one of the sons that was he was gorged by a bull and died from internal bleeding. And then the most tragic day that took place on that farm, the oldest Hill son, over a matter of like blackmail, there was a local farmer, a 12-year-old boy, who was trying to blackmail the Hill son, saying that they were German sympathizers towards the end of World War One. And they were a German family, right? But this little boy was trying to get $20 out of them. So he's like, I'm going to turn you into the government if you don't give me $20. And so the Hill son shot the 12-year-old, killed all the farm animals, killed himself, and then his sister also committed suicide, all on that same day. So the police get out to this farm, and it's quiet. There's blood everywhere. All the animals are dead, and the two remaining Hill siblings on the farm are also dead. And it was at that point that everyone in Waukesha said that property is most likely cursed because nothing good comes from anybody that lives there. And so over the course of the next 20 years, a man was trying to dynamite a boulder in the farm field and blew himself up. Another person drowned in the river. And then a young couple had two children die under the age of 2. So most likely from SIDS or something like that. But that was in the 1930s when 2 more people died. And at that point, nobody wants to live there, right? So between like 1930 and 1950, the property was just empty. Nobody wanted to live in that house. And then it was a woman from Chicago that bought it, renovated it, and gifted it to her daughter and son-in-law as like a wedding present. And as this young couple is moving in, the neighbors come over and they're like, hey, just so you know, this place is cursed. You should really burn it down and just leave. And they're like, that doesn't exist, whatever. And in the 1960s, they had a son that also drowned while they lived at that property. And then I think it was the late 1960s, their youngest son was actually playing in the barn and fell into an auger and was crushed to death.
Jeez.
And that was probably the most tragic story. But what's interesting about that one is 1 week before that young boy died, his grandma saw the ghost of the original owner on the property. And she saw him kind of walking from the back barn into the house. And she said the look on his face just looked like he was trying to give her some sort of warning, like pay attention or something bad's going to happen. And then, like I said, 1 week later, her grandson dies. So that was the last death, thankfully, on the property.
Jeez.
But I have talked to people, because the house has since been renovated into apartments. I've talked to people who have rented those apartments, and they're like, yeah, now that you mention it, we would see and hear a lot of weird things in their time living there. And so a lot of bizarre things that have happened on that property. And I've done a whole 45-minute talk on this at the Milwaukee Paracon. So I gave you like the very, very short, slim version of that story. Sure. But when I first heard that, I was like, there's so much going on here. And I could talk for another 20 minutes about the link to like the German sympathizer aspect, because that played a big role in why the police think they killed themselves. But just the fact that like so many people died under tragic and bizarre circumstances makes you think that there's something with the land that might be cursed. And that's one of the theories. Like whenever I go down to the historical society, they kind of know me as the ghost guide. So whenever I come, they're like, well, what are you researching now? Like what house, like what's the ghost, who died? And then every time I'm there, I'm like, somebody comes up and says, that hill farm, like my friend used to see shadow figures in the front yard, or I've heard stories about people walking through the farm fields at night and stuff like that. So it's the tragedy of the place that kind of brings out everybody's interest in why this took place. And it's not just that it took place, it's why. Why did this happen? And how do you go begin to explain why, the why behind all of it? And I have my theories on it, but that's the one that just has so many elements to it that I get so excited to tell on the tour every time, because it's just so different. I haven't heard anything like it in all the time I've been doing this.
Yeah, that is an interesting story. I'm sort of familiar with it, not as deeply as you, Josh, but yes,
Yeah.
I know they talked about it. Possibly it was on a native burial ground. There's been a bunch
Right.
of theories thrown out.
Right.
And Wisconsin, native burial grounds are all over the place.
Right.
Depending upon what areas you're in, especially in upper northern Wisconsin. Like Summerwind Mansion, which is one of my favorite topics I love to discuss and to talk about and everything. And it's kind of similar, but not similar to that. But there was a lot of tragedy with the Summerwind Mansion. And there's been many, many, many talks about rebuilding and putting something on there. But people have just said, no, let's just leave it alone.
Right? Yeah, maybe just don't. I would leave that land alone. And
so would I.
That goes back to the whole Ireland thing, is that all this energy and all these things are tied to the land to some degree. There's centuries old stories and legends and things that have been going on far before we were here. So it's just fascinating when you think about that, because a lot of times people don't like to think way back what happened here that maybe made this land the way it is today.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's just so much rich history. It's like we talked about on introduction. There's just so much stuff in Wisconsin that people just overlook.
Right.
Because we're a flyover state, and it's just don't think about it. You think about New York, LA, Chicago, the bigger states. But there's just so much of different things.
Right.
So kind of to switch topics here. I know weird Wisconsin, so let's stay with the weird here. We kind of talked about the paranormal and the ghost. Let's talk about UFOs. So I think what's really interesting, I have 3 quick short stories that I'll probably do a little bit more. And Josh, I would love to have you on and talk more about the Hill Farm. That would be great, and talk about stone tape theory. But these I wanted to bring up to show you how weird Wisconsin can be. Maybe you've heard of these, maybe you haven't. But so for decades, Wisconsin was home to 3 separate UFO festivals. I still think they're going on, with flying saucer parades, extraterrestrial beauty pageants, and tinfoil hats. There's a good reason for that. Wisconsin's had a lot of UFO sightings, so I won't get into how many, but there's been a lot.
Yeah.
And more than you would think. Especially everybody thinks of Roswell and Nevada and Area 51 and on and on and on. But this is funny. Elmwood, Wisconsin, Belleville, Wisconsin, and Dundee, Wisconsin all lay claims to the title UFO capital of Wisconsin. So I always thought that was super funny. I've been to all these places, and it's really interesting because they're not really big towns. They're smaller towns, and it's really funny. So one of the first stories I want to go into is there was a strange things in the skies, even back to the 1930s, when a young Coral Lorenzen witnessed something inexplicably soar over Barron County. This inspired her to seek out and study similar reports, first across the state and then the world. And she formed, believe it or not, here in Wisconsin, APRO, APRO, Aerial Phenomenal Research Organization, to connect with other researchers and abductees, connectees, all these people across the globe who've had UFOs. So that's really interesting, Josh. The first UFO organization was here in Wisconsin. So MUFON is the big one right now, UFO organization. There's a whole bunch of other ones. But this lady, back in the 30s and 40s, she decided to have hey, I'm gonna have this organization. So I think that was really cool. So when you talk about weird history and history, UFOs really started here, which is blows me away, right, Josh? Because you don't think about it.
It's, that's the weird thing about Wisconsin is not to be punny, but there's so many firsts in this state that people don't realize. And
Right.
I just looked this up myself because I didn't even know that. So that's probably gonna have to be a topic I have to cover because
Absolutely.
there's so many firsts here. And look at that. The first, alien research team, Sturgeon Bay, Wisconsin. It's crazy.
Yes. So it was a husband and wife team. You do some research on it. It's really interesting.
Hmm.
They did claim to see a UFO, kind of come after their car, and they tried to outrun it and everything. Basically, that's the story. But, more to come.
Right.
So,
Right.
in our podcast, we're kind of limited, but we'll do some more on this. Maybe, like I said, we have
Yeah.
tons of things to talk about, Josh. We'll have to have you back on and maybe choose another story and just
Oh, of
tell
course.
that topic.
Yeah.
Now, this is my favorite one by far. Is on April 18th, 1961. A UFO landed at Joe Simonton's house in Eagle River, which, oh my God, just makes me laugh. It's just this is a UFO, just bang, is at your house. One of the small
You're right.
extraterrestrial men, I don't know how they knew it was a man, but okay, inside handed him a jug of water to fill. Okay, so Joe brought them water, and then as he watched, they made pancakes, Josh, with the water.
Pancakes.
Correct. So they gave
The
some
aliens made pancakes?
correct. So they gave some pancakes to Joe, which he said they tasted like cardboard. Who knows? Aliens don't know how to make pancakes. Come on, aliens. And then Joe said, if that's what they lived on, Joe said, no wonder they're small. So there's a picture of Joe have a pancake in his hand that he claims. By the way, the pancake, you did a terrible job, Joe, if you made pancakes. It's not its oval shape. And I get it. It's aliens. They're making pancakes. They're not very good at it. No one said they had a griddle. No one said they put blueberries in it or chocolate chips. Unfortunately, Josh, they tried. They got some water from Joe. He said, I'm going to make some pancakes, the alien extraterrestrial said, and it just didn't work out. So I don't know. Any comments
The
about alien pancakes?
the intergalactic house of pancakes gives new
Yeah,
meaning to IHOP.
that's a good one. That's a good one.
I had no idea about that one either, but I see that the BBC did a story about it in
Correct.
1968, and they have
Correct.
footage of them. So I think that's going to be something I have to do a social video about because I started doing social videos in Waukesha, and my wife is like, you're going to run out of stories to tell, and I'm like, yes, like I'll have plenty of
Yes.
stories to tell, but that's why I started doing Weird Wisconsin is because it's like, oh,
Yes.
there's weird
Oh my
stuff
God.
everywhere, and now it's
Oh
like
my God.
I haven't really touched the surface with aliens, but that one
Yes.
is definitely one of the most bizarre stories, especially because
Yeah.
there's video associated with it.
And here's another thing too with that is to this day, people believe he had one time had tried to keep this pancake like I don't know what he tried to do with it, but he tried to keep it, right? To show people.
Right.
Now, just really quickly, folks, you're probably asking yourself, well, why don't they get it tested? Why don't they take it to a lab and just
Right.
test it? Right? That never happened. Okay, well, so believe what you want to believe. But I think it's a great fun story. Joe didn't
Right.
hurt anybody. Maybe it's true. Maybe aliens want our waffles and our pancakes. I don't know. I'm just saying. So now the next one is crop circles. Now, crop circles have come under a lot of fire and scrutiny because people
Right.
have admitted that they have just done it. Like guys go out in the middle of
Right.
the field and they have a special tool and they just do it. Well, in Mayville, Wisconsin, retiree Arthur Rantanella was sipping his morning coffee and watching as crop circles formed right before his eyes in a field across the street near Mayville on, check this out, this is fairly recent, July 4th, 2003. He saw no visible UFO, no beams of light, nothing to indicate the presence of anything that could cause it. It was an unprecedented case, the first known eyewitness to see a formation of crop circles appear in front of him with nobody there.
Mm-hmm.
And MUFON, which I just talked about, the paranormal investigators, and even the U.S. military came out to investigate.
Hmm.
So I never heard of this one, Josh. Being that it happened in 2003, that's not a long time ago.
No, no.
Again, we could do more in depth in here, but for the sake of time and everything, maybe Josh and I could revisit some of these things. He basically is just sitting there, and then he just sees ju 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 like something
Right,
landing, right? But he didn't hear anything, he didn't see anything, he didn't smell anything, he didn't nothing. It just happened. And now, okay, but being that the military came out and MUFON came out, that
yeah,
does
that
not happen because most MUFON is the largest organization I think in the world dedicated to UFO or UAP or whatever you want to say investigations. So they have
right,
professional people coming out, scientists, historians, you name it, physicists coming out. It isn't like me and Josh coming out and getting in the van and
right.
driving out. No, these are serious guys who take this very
Hmm.
seriously. And being that the US military came out, okay, that's interesting, right? I mean, what do you think?
Well, maybe one way to spin this story a different way is I have heard theories that people believe that aliens aren't above, but they're rather below, that they're under, like in the earth or underground. So maybe instead of like something coming down, maybe it was something underneath that was causing the corn stalks to bend. But it is interesting again that this was in the middle, or at least in the morning when it was
Yeah,
sun out, and he could visibly see these things happening. And I just looked up photos of them because I vaguely remember this happening, or at least hearing about it, because back then what it was, we had like that movie Signs that came out, and there was
correct.
quite a few different alien theories going around. But it's like, why would a farmer make up this
Yeah,
story, right?
there's no right,
What does he have to benefit? So it's
correct.
like that's when you really start to believe these people that they saw something genuine, because like this could, if they come out with this information, it could possibly make things like life more difficult for them. So it would seemingly be something that you should believe, but you just don't have an explanation for it. Like, how did this happen? Why here? And what does it mean? The
Hmm.
bigger thing about aliens is like we have even less of an idea about them than ghosts, right?
Correct.
Maybe the what this is the age of disclosure. All of the files are going to be released, and we're finally going to know about these things. But
Right.
we'll see. But I have had less alien encounters than ghost encounters, so I can't exactly say the truth to any of that. But when you hear stories like this about
Hmm.
pancakes and crop circles in the morning, it's like
Yeah,
these are average people that are telling these
correct.
stories. It's
Right.
not like they're going to be making it up for any sort of benefit, and they
No.
certainly probably didn't benefit from it.
No, no, absolutely. They got probably more scrutiny. So my last story is actually someone was killed by a UFO in Elmwood,
Hmm.
Wisconsin. So this is what I thought was really interesting. And I'd like to do a little more
Sure.
bigger topic on it. So the town of Elmwood, it's now home of the world famous Elmwood UFO days. If you go look it up, I don't know if they still do it, but it's pretty funny. Like people get dressed up like extraterrestrials and they like have little ships and stuff that they go parading down the main street. So they had already been experiencing a bizarre rash of UFO sightings for at least a year when police
Mhm.
officer George Wheeler had his fateful encounter on April 22nd, 1926. Wheeler had driven his cruiser up to Tuttle Hill overlooking the quarry to investigate what he thought to be a fire. When he got there, however, he discovered a glowing saucer shaped object. He told his wife that he could see people moving around inside. My God, it's one of those UFOs again, Wheeler's voice cracked over the radio back at the station, and then it went dead. Farmer found Wheeler still sitting in his car at the top of the dark hill. He was dazed, and the vehicle's electrical system was dead. Wheeler said that the UFO had zapped him with a bright blue light, and then he didn't remember anything after that until the farmer arrived. In the following weeks, Wheeler started to not feel well and complained of nightmares. He became increasingly more ill and died less than a year later on February 12th, 1977. So
Hmm.
that is one of the few cases I have heard that people have been killed by a UFO.
Right.
There's occasionally I've heard, how do you say, urban legends, right? Whether to believe it or not to believe it. This is documented. This is documented in Elmwood, Wisconsin.
Right.
You're the history guy. Maybe you want to look this up to do a little research on it if you would like. But here's two things. Why are they having a festival to celebrate this when somebody died? I'm a little bit like, somebody died
Right.
and you're having a festival?
Right.
I don't know, maybe rethink that one. But for just really quickly, there were just in the 70s in Elmwood, Wisconsin, which I've been to Elmwood, Wisconsin, but not, I don't live there or I don't go there on a regular basis. But
Right.
there's nothing special about it. It's not really near military bases. It's not really near, I don't know, anything that I would say would be attractive to the extraterrestrials or alien aircraft.
Right.
Because usually it goes over areas that have to deal with military bases. It might go over nuclear powered facilities. It might go over,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, other bases or other areas. Usually it's focused in a water area if you have a lot of lakes around there or something, or
Right.
certain things underground. But this, couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
Don't know
That's
why.
like just
Don't know why. Yeah.
kind of like the middle of nowhere, it seems like.
Yes. It's really bizarre. There's not much to it. It's a nice little town. It's fine. Nothing special. Nothing
When is
really.
the Alien Festival?
I think they have it in the summer, if I remember correctly. I think it's in June or July, if they still have it. I know Belleville used to have it in June, which is really funny. I went to it like
Sure.
once, and it's super funny. Like all the bars in the area, they have like alien drinks and like alien burger, and of course they charge. Not gonna
Sure.
lie, folks, they charge you a little bit more money if you go. So prepared if you go with the wife or the family and you just want to check it out and spend a day there. It's tons of fun. There's activities for the little kids. There's activities, little
Mm.
parades, and all the businesses have like alien extraterrestrial sales, or the bars and the
Sure.
restaurants have like little themes. So it's kind of fun if you're looking for something. I don't know if they still do it, to be honest with you, but at one time I know they were doing it around the summertime. So, which makes sense. And people
Yeah.
could
So I
rent
just
vehicles too. So, yeah.
I just looked it up, and they have photos on it. They have a Facebook page for it. It's UFO Days, Elmwood, Wisconsin, and it's the last weekend of every July. Yeah,
Very
they have a
cool.
parade. People dressed up like aliens, alien cookies. Yeah, it looks like this year it's 20, 25, 26, 20. Oh, that was last year. I keep forgetting it's 2026, but
Got it.
yeah, it looks like they have it every last weekend of July. So
There you go.
I might have to go out there myself. But
There you
you
go.
just gave me some good stories to do some further research on, because
Absolutely. You're
you
more than
know
welcome. Yeah.
the pancake was super silly, but there's footage with it.
Yes.
We've got
Yes.
the policeman killed by an alien, and then the the Mayville crop circles. That's not too far from me, so it'd be kind of cool to go check out where that exactly happened. So yeah, you've just given me some good content, so I appreciate it.
I loved it because it's so much fun. I even got to the story. I didn't want to get to I haven't got to this one, but there's another one where supposedly this gentleman in Dundee, I think it was in Dundee, at a bar or something. I did a little feature on it where he had for the longest time an alien baby, excuse me, in a pickle jar that he would show people. And when you
Yeah.
go to this, it's a dive bar in Dundee, Wisconsin, and people used to come in there. The gentleman has long passed, unfortunately, but you would go
Okay.
in there and he'd have this. Well, you can look it up. This alien in a pickle jar that he would show people. I can't remember what has happened to that alien in the pickle jar, but the man claims that the alien extraterrestrial landed and said, "Here's my baby," or something to that effect. Anyway, it's a very, very bizarre and weird story that got a lot of, and I did an episode on it, a lot of
Okay.
press and everything. To be honest with you, it looks like somebody had like a fetal pig and they put it in a jar but kind of messed around with it. But I don't know, maybe
Okay.
it could be an
Okay.
alien, but who knows? But people, there's a whole rash of other UFO stories. I even got to the alien who wanted to watch a Packer game. He loved the Packers and he came down here and he wanted to watch a Packer game with this one guy. That was one of his wishes. So who knows? There's just
Who
so much
knows?
craziness. There's so much weirdness. It's awesome.
I
You
know.
know, you can't run
Yeah,
out
we
of
could we
stories.
could we could be here for 8 hours talking about weirdness. It's
Yes.
it's it's
Yes.
incredible, like how much this state has to offer, and it's not just not just aliens and ghosts. Like I just did like a video about why was Milwaukee once the beer capital of the world? Like why Milwaukee? Of all the
Right.
big cities, it's like why? It's because we have the perfect water. We've got the German population that came here, and the perfect conditions for brewing. So it was kind of like a perfect storm of like it's weird it's in Milwaukee, but it was here, at one point in time. So I like to cover all, sorts
Love
of
it.
history because it's
Love it.
like it doesn't just have to be scary or spooky or,
Correct.
whip pancakes, which is really weird. But it's just like why are these things happening around us and why were they here at one time? So it's just
Absolutely.
like
Yeah.
I just love talking about all this stuff,
Yeah. It's so,
from
yeah. It's
super outrageous to super scary. It's like
yes.
let's just talk about it because it's
Yeah,
fun.
everywhere in between. Yes.
Right,
So,
right.
Josh, thank you so much for taking time out today and being on the show. I thoroughly enjoyed this. I would love to have you back on, talk about the Hill family curse, maybe talk about summer wind, maybe talk about something in Waukesha, the surrounding areas.
Yeah,
Maybe do a
definitely.
total show on that. I would love that. That would be great. So, thank you so much. And if you want to tell my spooky friends, where can they find you? What do you got coming out?
Right. Yeah. So, this is kind of the slow time of year. October is very busy,
Yep.
but you can follow me on Weird Wisconsin. I do a lot of posts, photos, and videos about just different stories all across the state, as we just mentioned. But for now, I'm working on a few projects that hopefully will be coming out near October. And then around May, June is when I start doing the Waukesha Ghost Walks again, all across the state. If you go to AmericanGhostWalks.com, you can see plenty of tours in all the big cities and small and everything in between. So lots of good offerings. And if you're traveling, always look up American Ghost Walks because they're in, I don't know, probably more than 10 states now. So
Yeah.
we've got a lot of history to learn about across the country.
Yes, absolutely. And they're great ghost walks. I've been on a couple and I've interviewed Mike Huberty one of the earlier shows, and he was a very nice man, very, very informative, and we had a great conversation. And maybe I can have him on sometime again. Maybe we can
Oh,
have
yeah,
the
definitely.
dream team. We could have you, me, and Mike on and kind of go through it, different things coming up. Plug your book again, Josh, so people know where they can
Yes.
find it and grab it if they want to grab a copy.
Ghost of
Awesome.
Waukesha. You can buy it on Amazon, but it's better if you buy it from me directly. Obviously, not everybody lives in Waukesha, but if you're in the area and want to meet up, I'll even give you a little deal and sign it for you. But it's on
Nice.
Amazon, and then a few local bookstores in the area also have it. So
Love
buy
it.
it, give it a good review, reach out if you have any more questions. Again, that's Weird Wisconsin across all platforms. I'm very active and I get back to everybody. So it's just nice sharing stories. I've learned so much telling stories as much as people have commented like, hey, did you hear about this? Have you heard about this city? Have you heard about these things? It's like even you today, it's like I'm learning so much constantly from everybody around us. And that's what makes it great. It's not just social media to get likes and all that stuff. It's to like connect with people and further learn more about Wisconsin.
You're right. It's so much great stuff, so much untapped stories and interesting events that happen here. Not only paranormal, but it goes across the gamut of things. So thank you
Right,
again, Josh.
right,
Like I said, I'd love to have you back on. We could talk about, one of those deeper involved topics, whether it be stone tape theory or hill farm or whatever we like to talk
right.
about. But please visit Josh. Go like he said, he's all over the internet. So Weird Wisconsin, Josh, if you're in the area, stop by, get a copy of his book, have him autograph it, have him tell you some stories, go on the tour when the tour is
Yeah,
available.
there you go.
You won't regret it. So thanks, Josh, and stay spooky.